On July 8th, 2000, I was born. My parents remember me being a, normal baby. I would always wake them up every 2 hours just so they could feed me and change my diaper and everything. But I do believe the way I was raised was different than most of my peers because of their deafness. I didn't really grow up experiencing the hearing world as I grew up, and I felt like that affected my way of life in that certain point. I believe that this relates to Piaget's theory, going through a sensory and motor stage, because of my certain sensory interactions. Without the lack of hearing, I couldn't really develop the form of speech very well, and eventually when I grew up I did have to go through speech therapy in order to process my speech very well and make me the person that can talk and speak sign language today. When I was 2 years old, I cut my hand. I was a young kid at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. My parents had opened a can of tuna, and I played around with the open lid and everything, and I accidentally cut my hand. I remember it being very painful. My parents were freaked out. They sent me to the hospital. I got a bunch of stitches. I still have the scar from that experience. I think I remember, from that point on, until I learned how to use can opener, I just stayed away from cans. And I believe that this relates to Culver's stage of pre-conventional morality, because obviously I did not use my sense of morals to apply it to the can, and it led me to getting my hand cut, and then I learned to associate my morals with staying away from danger at that point. When I was about 3 or 4, I entered preschool for the first time. I remember it being so much fun. We did a lot of things. We made soup. We explored about the human body. We also played with a bunch of bricks I thought were really cool at the time. We also did stuff like go to Phillips Park. We went to Blackberry Farm. I think we went swimming when the pool at East was still there. I just remember being a good, wholesome time for me. And I got to really experience this what school felt like for the first time. I believe that this event relates to Erickson's stage of initiative versus skill, because this is the point where I started to break away from my family's rules in the house and just kind of explore on my own, playing with all the toys that I possibly could, and just having a really fun time in preschool. When I was 9, I joined the Cub Scouts. I joined it 2 separate times. The first time, the pack was very small, and so I quit about a month afterwards. And then the second time it was in my local elementary school, and I proceeded to stay and go to the ranks so fast. They promoted me to the Boy Scouts early, and I'm very proud to say that I've been with the program for many years, and I'm almost done with my Eagle Scout rank, which is only a small number of Boy Scouts in America can only say they achieved. And I believe that this relates to Erickson's stage of competence versus inferiority, because I put myself in through every activity that we had. I learned every life skill, every survival skill. I went to all the campouts. I helped lead the younger scouts when I got older, and I learned all my daily morals throughout there to be physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. And I follow these guidelines every single day of my life. When I was 11 years old, I joined wrestling first time. Initially, I wasn't going to do it, but my football coach, who was also a wrestling coach, persuaded me to join. And it's something I don't regret. I've gained a lot of wrestling skills experience. I've definitely gotten stronger because I've seen a bunch of my old photos when I first joined, and I was ridiculously scrawny. It's pretty funny to just look back and see how much I've grown. And now that my last year has passed, I'm proud to say I got a couple medals for this year, something which was very hard to do throughout my high school career. And I'm very proud to where the program has grown. I believe that this relates to Marsha's stage of moratorium, because at this point I was trying to find who I was in middle school, and I tried looking for everything, and wrestling was one of them. I joined a bunch of clubs. Boy Scouts was another way to try to find my identity, but wrestling was a big influence in my life. Around that same age, when I was 11 or 12, my grandma unfortunately passed away. It was a very hard time for us. She was a very hardworking woman. She let my father immigrate to America, which must have been very tough on her, seeing one of your children move away to a very far away place. I do miss her a lot. She was a very nice lady from what I can remember, and it's very heart-wrenching because another experience like this just happened in my life. I don't want to really get into it because I'm going to get super depressed if I talk about it more, so that's why I'm going to move on. I do believe that this relates to Kohlberg's stage of conventional morality, because at the time I didn't really tell anyone of my problems except for a couple of my close friends and a couple of teachers who knew about the situation, and that was just because I tried to look like I wasn't really affected by anything. I don't know why. I think I was just trying to stay in the masculine gender stereotype of oh, nothing can affect me, but realizing that was a mistake, because after that I was super depressed for a while, and I was really questioning about what was life about. When I was 14, one of the biggest moments happened in my life. That summer I went to Coda Camp, which was a camp made for kids just like me. They all had deaf parents, and I fell in love with the camp literally the first day I went there. Everyone is super nice there. They treat you like family even though you met them for 2 minutes, and you learn to love them even though you might have differences amongst each other. I'm from a really localized minority community, and most of them were from the general population. But besides those differences, they've become some of my closest friends. I miss them to this day, and I really want to come back there soon. I believe that this relates to Marsha's stage of achievement, because I had found my identity as a CODA, or a kid of deaf adults, and I found what I want to do, which was teach for deaf kids in honor of my parents and in honor of Coda Camp. Last year I did one of the biggest projects I've ever worked on in my life, which was my Eagle Scout project. In order to become an Eagle Scout, you must perform a community service project that not only relates to your community, but just helps out someone in general. And what I did was, after the hurricanes that hit Puerto Rico, I collected water bottles from donations, and I packaged them all, and we moved them into a bigger community drive, which provided other things such as food and clothes and other necessary supplies. And we moved our water bottles to their drive, and afterwards I helped them out with throughout the rest of the day. It was one of the biggest months of my life, because I knew that this would help out probably thousands of people affected by the Puerto Rico hurricane, and just knowing that they'll have the supplies to survive after such a tragic event is really it feels really heartwarming, because I felt like I was a part of relief history in some way. This relates to Kohlberg's stage of post-conventional morality, because I decided that I would help out people for their sake and not just for my own. Next year, I am going to Illinois State University. This is probably one of the most confident decisions I've ever made in my life. I know what major I'm going to be intending to. I'm going to special education. I figured out, I met with all the teachers over there. They're super nice people. I cannot wait to work with them. I'm also very excited about the other opportunities I might have. I might be getting the Golden Apple Scholarship, which will provide me with a bunch of amazing other opportunities and more hours, clinical hours, to add to my resume and make me more eligible for a job in the future, which I cannot wait to work with kids who have hearing loss or some way, and express to them that no matter what barriers they might face in their lives, nothing can stop them as long as they power on through. This relates to Piaget's formal operational stage, because in college I will be trying to figure out how to logically apply the concepts of deaf education into morals of the education system, and figure out ways to make it better for everyone. I'm going to be trying to incorporate STEM into the program to see how much we can really benefit for everyone in the special education system. When I'm hopefully 65, I will finally retire from my job as a teacher for the deaf. I'll hopefully have a wife and children to look back to and say, hey, I did it. I left an imprint on the special education program. And I just hope that I've made enough discoveries and achievements to leave a lasting legacy on the special education program in general, and future generations can look back on my research and use it for their inspiration to do better things than I could have ever done. I just really hope that this will become a pivotal moment in my life and not feel any regret. I believe that this stage of my life will relate to Erickson's stage of integrity versus despair, because at that point I will reflect upon myself and wonder, did I do enough to feel accomplished in life and not feel any regret and despair? One of my main goals is to become one of the best special education teachers the world has ever seen, and with my background I feel like that could be the plot of a movie or something, and I do hope that people will draw inspiration from me and use it for their future. Thank you.